Okay, so let's talk about Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. On one hand, you hear it called the great American novel, right? The book that somehow bottled the very soul of a nation. But then, for almost 140 years, it's also been this major lightning rod for debate, for anger, even for censorship. So, yeah, let's dive into this incredibly complex American classic.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, how can a book from the 1880s still feel so explosive today? To even begin to answer that, we've got to get into the deep contradiction that's just beating at the very heart of this thing. And, well, there you have it. You've got guys like Ernest Hemingway saying all of modern American literature comes from this one book. And at the same time, it's constantly being challenged and yanked out of school libraries. So, what is it? A masterpiece or a menace? The wild thing is, as we're going to see, it's kind of both. All right, so let's start right there. Let's really unpack that contradiction. Because you just can't understand Huck Finn without getting into the controversies that have followed it around since the literal day it was published. And believe me, the backlash was immediate. We're talking 1885, right after it came out, it gets banned in Concord, Massachusetts. Critics called it trashy and vicious. The New York Public Library actually blocked it from the children's room, but get this, not for the reasons you'd think. It was because Huck scratched when he itched and said the word sweat. No, I'm not kidding. And you know what? That pattern of people trying to ban it, it's never really stopped. But here's the thing. We can't really get to the bottom of the modern controversy without first understanding how the book is actually built, you know? What was Twain even trying to do? So let's peel back the layers of this story, kind of like an onion, and start with its literary DNA. Okay, so the first real key to unlocking Huck Finn is to realize it's not just some kid's adventure story. Nope. It fits into a very specific type of story, a genre with its own set of rules and its own mission. It's what you call a picaresque novel.
So what in the world does that mean? Well, a picaresque novel is all about a picaro, basically a rascal. He's usually a clever, kind of low-class hero who has to live by his wits because the society he's in is just totally corrupt. Sound like anyone we know? Yeah, that's Huck Finn, 100%.
And it actually breaks down into a pretty clear formula. A scholar named Thomas Pugh laid out these 4 key elements. First, it's told in the first person, almost like a fake autobiography. Second, the heroes and outsider, totally alienated. Third, the story is just a string of separate adventures, one after the other. And finally, and this is the big one, the whole point is to make fun of, to satirize, the messed up world the hero is stuck in. And this quote right here, it's the perfect example of that first point. The book kicks off with Huck talking directly to you, the reader. It feels so informal, almost like he's letting you in on a secret. And right away, he becomes our guide, telling us his story in his own unpolished but incredibly real voice. Okay, let's peel back the next layer, because this is where it all comes together. Huck's entire journey plays out between 2 really powerful symbolic places, the Mississippi River itself and the quote-unquote civilized world on the shore. And this right here, this is the central conflict of the whole book. For Huck and Jim, the man who's escaped slavery, the river is pure sanctuary. It's freedom, it's truth, it's hope. But the shore? Oh, the shore is where civilization is. And in Twain's book, civilization is basically a total nightmare. It's just con men, violent family feuds, and incredible hypocrisy. Literally every time they set foot on land, they stumble right back into the corruption they're trying to get away from. And Huck just says it perfectly himself. The raft is their floating paradise. It's the only place where these 2 total outcasts, a poor white kid and an escaped black man, can build a real human connection. They're finally away from the smothery, awful rules of a society that's trying to tear them apart. All right, so now that we have that framework, we can really tackle the hard stuff head on, the language, and that notorious ending. This is where pretty much all of the modern debate comes from. 213. That's the number. That's how many times the N-word is printed in Huckleberry Finn. There's just no way to get around that number. It's a stark, painful fact, and it is right at the absolute heart of this whole controversy. So the big question is, how are we supposed to read this? On one side, you have people who say Twain was using the real language of his time to write a powerful takedown of racism. You know, a satire exposing how rotten slave-owning society was. They'll point out that nearly all the white characters are awful, greedy, violent, or just plain dumb, while Jim is often the most moral person in the story. But on the other side, critics argue that it doesn't matter what the intention was. Hearing and reading that slur over and over is just deeply harmful for students. And they'll also say that the character of Jim at times still feels like a stereotype. This is a debate with absolutely no easy answers. And it's not just about the language. The other huge flashpoint is the ending of the book. For more than 100 years, some of the biggest names in literature have ripped into those final chapters. Tom Sawyer shows back up and turns Jim's life or death escape into this cruel, ridiculous game. A lot of people feel like it just completely undermines the serious moral journey that came before it. But there's another way to look at it, a much darker, more cynical reading. This idea suggests that the ending is actually the most brutal satire in the whole book. Think about it. Tom Sawyer knows the whole time that Jim has already been legally freed, but he puts him through that humiliating circus anyway, just for fun. So from this perspective, the point is that Jim's freedom isn't even real. It's just a game that powerful white people get to play with. That is a truly bleak and sinister commentary on the failures of emancipation.
So, after all that, the literary brilliance, the painful language, that ending that everyone argues about, why? Why are we still talking about this book? What makes it stick around?
Well, maybe the answer is that Huckleberry Finn endures precisely because it's so uncomfortable. It's not a simple story with a nice, neat moral at the end. Not at all. Instead, it holds up this kind of cracked mirror to America's own contradictions, back then and right now, and it forces us to really grapple with what we see in the reflection. When you boil it down, it's a story about a kid who chooses his own conscience over what society tells him is right. It's this deep dive into what freedom even means. And more than anything, it's a trip down a river that reveals all the hypocrisy and violence hiding just under the surface of civilization. It really is a portrait of America, warts and all. And in the end, the book leaves us right here with this question. Is it a relic of a racist past, or is it a timeless lesson against that racism? The fact that we are still arguing about it, still fighting over what it means and where it belongs, well, that might be the biggest proof of its power. It just refuses to be simple, and it absolutely refuses to go away.